Brilliant. Lovely to have you joining us again for our third and final session in our Shabbat course. So this week it's very exciting. We've got Rabbi Bazak here. He's always exciting. I always say you never know what's going to happen when Rabbi Bazak is on. So anything might happen. Watch this space. He's going to start by teaching us about the laws of Muktzah. Then we're going to continue. I'm going to take you on a quick tour of the house. Some of the most common things that come up. We've covered the kitchen in the last 2 weeks. So this week we're going to cover the house, the rest of the house essentially, and things that come up there. And then Rabbi Ross is going to be joining us at 9 for Kiddush and Havdalah. Okay, so Rabbi Bazak, over to you.
Okay, first of all, the first thing that I want to say is that everyone should get this book. That's the first thing, because it's amazing. It's an amazing book. It looks like a kiddie book, but it has a tremendous amount of information in it. And basically, I did all of my rabbinic tests using this book as the source text. And once I'd read this book a few times, then I was fine. So I recommend everyone to get it, and then you can be a rabbi. You'll be pretty good. Okay, so let's start like this. So there's whenever the rabbis make a decree on Shabbos, let's say, and prohibiting something on Shabbos, there's two fundamental reasons why they might make the decree. One is because they're worried that if you get involved in this activity, then that might lead you to other activities. Either you might confuse the activities, or it's just you're getting involved with something you shouldn't get involved with, and you'll end up stoking something or pushing something, etc. I'll tell you the name of the book in a minute, Lisa, don't worry. Lisa wants to become a rabbi, clearly. No one else does. Okay, fine. So what you've got two different, so that's one type. We're worried about you're going to do actions that are prohibited. There's another level of decree though, which is that sometimes the rabbis said the spirituality on Shabbos is a bit sensitive. And therefore, if you don't have the right focus, you won't be able to tap into it. And if you're just behaving like you do during the rest of the week, speaking the way you do the rest of the week, behaving like you do the rest of the week, then you might miss out on the unique spirituality of Shabbos. So Muktzah, the laws of Muktzah, the laws of which prohibit moving various items, tap into both of those. There's certain times where we're actually worried about you doing a forbidden activity with it, and there's certain times where we're not worried per se about a forbidden activity, but we don't want you to react. We don't want you to relate the object on the day of Shabbos like you do during the rest of the week. Just like we don't want your speech to be the same during the rest of the week as we do on Shabbos, so too we don't want your moving of objects, your interaction with objects to be the same as it is during the week as on Shabbos. So what we're going to do is, that's principle number one. Principle number two is, I'm very nervous because I've got limited time of just trying to go through loads and loads and loads of items. I could just show you every item in the house and say, that's Muktzah, that's not Muktzah. This is Muktzah, that's not Muktzah. This is Muktzah, that's not Muktzah. And I could give you loads of items. Muktzah, not Muktzah, I don't know. Headphones, Muktzah, not Muktzah. Phone, Muktzah. I could just tell you this is Muktzah, that's not Muktzah. So I don't want to do that, because then any new item that you have in your house that I don't have in my house, you won't know. So what I want to do is I want to give you two principles. So Muktzah means that there's certain items that you are not allowed to move on Shabbos. It doesn't mean you're not allowed to touch them, but you're not allowed to move them on Shabbos. You're not allowed to move them on Shabbos. So I'm going to go through two categories of items that you're not allowed to move on Shabbos. Okay? And then I'm going to give some examples in each category and try and explain them a little bit. So category number one are items which have no intrinsic purpose on Shabbos whatsoever. They don't have usage for a human being on Shabbos. I'll give you an example. I don't have it with me, but earlier on I had a potato with me, a raw potato. So if you had a raw potato, what on earth can you do with a raw potato on Shabbos? You can't eat it, because if you've ever tried to eat a raw potato, it's not pleasant. And it's not edible. A raw potato is just completely inedible. There's no usage in terms of eating. Okay, so maybe I could use a raw potato there. I can cook a raw potato. Okay, but you can't cook a raw potato on Shabbos. So a raw potato will be considered something with no fundamental usage on Shabbos. If it's got no fundamental usage on Shabbos, if it's got nothing about potato is usable on Shabbos. Therefore, as a result of that, the rabbi said, we don't want you moving items like that. That's not a Shabbosdic item. Keep away from that. Don't start moving those type of items on Shabbos. So now, let's say you had an apple in front of you. Let's say you had an apple in front of you and you had a potato in front of you, both foods, but one food you would be able to move, the apple, because it has a usage. You could just take a bite out of it, eat it. One food you'll not be able to move because at the moment it's not edible and it has no fundamental usage. So that's one category, no fundamental usage. Let me give you some other examples of this, okay? What about sand? What are you going to use sand for on Shabbos? Sand is not anything with any intrinsic purpose in and of itself. It's something which just lies around. It's something which is just there. Or a rock. A rock is something which fundamentally, in and of itself, it's not designed for any purpose. There's no designated usage of rocks that I am aware of. We'll talk in a minute about whether you can designate it for a purpose.
I know some in Israel.
Pardon?
They use the rocks in Israel all the time on Shabbos.
Good. So we'll talk about how they do that. That's a really good question. I don't know who asked that question. I assume it was Elvis. And I can't even see you. Okay,
Yeah, something fictitious like this would always be from me. Yeah,
yeah,
you're supposed to use the item before Shabbos. That's the same way you use it on Shabbos.
Let's go slowly here. So again, first of all, the principle in that is if it in and of itself doesn't have usage on Shabbos, then it is not considered. It doesn't have any specific designated purpose on Shabbos. Then it's not usable on Shabbos. You're not allowed to use it. And another example of that would be, let's say you broke something. You had a vessel, you had a cup, but you broke it, and now it's completely unusable. So that is now going to be muksa on Shabbos, because you can't use it for anything. It has no usage. If it has no usage, then that's considered muksa, and you're not allowed to move it on Shabbos. You're not allowed to clear it away. You're not allowed to carry it around. You're not allowed to move it on Shabbos. If there's no purpose to it itself, it doesn't have any usage on Shabbos, you're not allowed to use it. That's the first principle, which is intrinsic muksa. Intrinsic muksa. Now, there's two ways you can carry something, you can move something like that on Shabbos. I shouldn't say carry, you should move something like that on Shabbos. There's one way, which is you turn it into an item with a designated purpose. So picture the scene. You had your nice rock. Now, you want to use your rock as a doorstop. So you get the family together, you get the rock, you start shaving down the rock, you start painting the rock, you start sprinkling the glitter on the rock, it gets in your beard. It's all lovely, yeah? You've got your rock, and now you've got your solid rock that you're going to use as your doorstop. So you've now turned your rock from a rock into a doorstop. It is now a doorstop. The question is how much do you need to do to turn a rock into a doorstop? Do you need to do everything I just said, including the glitter? Or is it enough to just paint it? Or is it enough to affect it in some way? Or is it enough to just designate it verbally, let's say? If I said, I pick up the rock, and I say, here's my rock, let's say, it's toilet paper at the moment, but I'm going to show you toilet paper in a minute. You got a rock, and you say, I am going to lift it up above your head, however high you need to lift it, and you say, I am now going to use this as a doorstop forevermore. So is that enough? So that might be enough as well. The principle is, as long as you designate it, at least from now onwards, I'm going to use this rock not as a doorstop, not as a rock, but I'm not going to relate to it as a rock anymore. I'm going to relate to it as a doorstop. Now that rock has become what is known as a kli. It's become known as something with a specific, which is designed with a specific purpose. You've designated it for usage, for your usage on Shabbos. So now you will be able to move that rock on Shabbos. Now you'll be able to move that rock on Shabbos. I'm going to give you another example, which Rabbi Birnbaum might cover later, because it might be prohibited for other reasons. But at least in terms of muksa, okay, at least in terms of muksa. So sand again doesn't have usage on Shabbos. It's not designated for any particular purpose, for any particular human usage. What about if you designate your sand that I want to use my sand in my kid's play tray, and I want him to play, and I want him to be able to play with it on Shabbos. So at least in terms of muksa, there might be other issues. But in terms of muksa, there's no problem moving that sand because I designated that now as a toy. So now my sand is being used as a toy, so that's okay. Okay, so that is principle number one. We've got intrinsic muksa, and the way around intrinsic muksa, the way in which you can move intrinsic muksa is if you make it no longer intrinsically muksa. You give it a purpose. You give it a usage, a designated usage. There's another way which you can move muksa, which is you can do it with a process called kil'achayad, which means indirectly, or tiltul min hatzad, which is all indirect type of move. So you could move. This is where you see people moving things with their elbows and moving things with their nose and things like that. So that already, that the rabbi said, we're going to allow you to do that for certain, we're going to allow you to do that for this type of muksa, that you can move them with the back of a knife or something in certain circumstances. There you'll be allowed to move it indirectly. Okay, so this is category number 1. We're going to go on to category number 2 now. That is intrinsic mukta. Now, what about though, if you've got something which is known as a kli? A kli is something which is a vessel, it is called a vessel, but it doesn't mean a vessel that contains liquid. A kli is an object which has a designated purpose, was created with a designated purpose. I'll give you an example. Can everyone see that? That's a pen, in case you don't know, right? That's a pen. So a pen is not, that can't hold any liquid per se, but it is an item which has been created for a designated purpose. This one has been created to write with, yeah, or it's been created to flick, whichever you're doing. So now, if you've got an item which has a designated purpose, a kli, that you have to know now, what is its designated purpose? Is its designated purpose something which is prohibited on Shabbos, or is it designated purpose something which is what's the other one? Permitted on Shabbos. Permitted on Shabbos. So I'll give you an example. Here we have a vessel or a kli with a designated purpose. Can everyone see what that is? It's a COVID-friendly one, right? You didn't know what this was about 6 months ago, but now we all do. This is a visor. So is there anything prohibited about visors on Shabbat in terms of the usage of them? No. Therefore, this is a vessel that, even though it's got a designated purpose, so it's not intrinsic mukta, but this you can move on Shabbat basically for any reason, pretty much for any reason. What about a pen? We'll just come back to our pen. I've got a red pen this time. What about that? So that's designated purpose is writing. Well, writing is prohibited on Shabbat, right? So if writing is prohibited on Shabbat, so this is now known as a kli shemalachto le'issa. This is a vessel whose designated purpose is prohibited. This type of thing is prohibited. You're not allowed to move it unless, here's the principle, unless you are moving it to use it, not obviously for its prohibited purpose. I'll talk about what using it means in a second, or that you need its space. I will explain these two concepts now. Let's take kli shemalachto le'issa like a pair of tefillin. Okay. Alina, was I there? Pair of tefillin, okay? Now, you're not really allowed to use, you don't wear tefillin on Shabbat. You're not really supposed to wear tefillin on Shabbat. So therefore, it's known as a vessel which is designated for a prohibited purpose. The problem is you left your tefillin on your bed and you now want to go to sleep. So what do? If it was a rock, you'd be stuck because you'd have to get it off with your elbow, or you'd have to tip the bed, or so you'd have to do something funny. But because this is not intrinsic muksa, this is a vessel which is for a designated purpose which is prohibited, so therefore you're not allowed to move it except if you need its space. So now you can pick up your tefillin with your hand and move it on the shelf without any problem. Or let's give another example. You've got a dishwasher or an oven. Let's say an oven. Somebody opened the oven door on Shabbos. Now, an oven is clearly a vessel which is designated for a prohibited purpose, clearly. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to walk, but I need to walk past the ovens, and I'm going to knock into it every 3 minutes. So that's no good. So in as much as I need that space now, I can close the oven door, as long as there's no electrical things going on with the oven, etc. So there's no electrical things, so you can close the oven door. That's called l'tzorech makomo. That's, I need the space of my kli, which is asa. It's not intrinsic muksa, but it's a vessel which has a designated purpose, which is prohibited. You're not allowed to move it unless you need its place, or if I need to use it for a permitted purpose. Let's give an example. You want to store some food and you've got no room in the fridge anymore, and you're a bit worried the flies are going to get to it. So your oven is off and you think, oh, I know, I want to store it in my oven. But hold on a second, you can't open your oven door and start using your oven, because your oven is a kli which has a designated purpose, which is nukta, which is awesome. So you're not allowed to do that. So here, because you're going to use it for a permitted purpose, you're allowed to open the oven door, put your food inside, and close the oven door again because you're worried the flies are going to get to it. That's no problem whatsoever. Okay, so a utensil with a prohibited purpose can be moved if you need its space or if you need it for a particular purpose. I'll give you one more example of this and then I'm going to finish. The last example of this would be, it's the summer and for some reason it's sunny in England. So you've got a fan on. So your fan is a utensil which is used for a prohibited purpose because it's electric. Are you allowed to turn your fan around so that it's blowing on you? So there you're allowed to do that because you're now using it for a purpose. With the purpose of wind blowing on you is permissible. Therefore, you're allowed to do that. What happens if it's blowing on you? You're getting cold. So now you're allowed to turn it away from you because that is either using it for its space or using it for its purpose. So I'm done. So just to summarize, there's intrinsic muksa, which the only way around it is by either making it a utensil, by designating it as a utensil with a specific purpose, or by moving it indirectly. Once we're into the world of utensils, then utensils can be moved, even if they are for prohibited purpose. They can be moved if you need their space or if you need their usage.
Excellent. Thank you, Rabbi Bazak. Do you have any questions? Any questions on that? Okay, so we are going to move on. Thank you very much, Rabbi Bazak, for that. And the next things we're going to cover around the home, we're going to cover cleaning things up. Okay, so something which is very important to know is that on Shabbat, here, I've got my props here to show you. Okay, back with my water again from last week. And whoops. Not washing hands this time. But can you see this? Right here. You see that? That's a no-no on Shabbat. None of that. That's squeezing. That's not good. We don't want to do that. We really need to avoid that, okay? So can you see one of these? That's my sponge. Okay. And if I take my sponge and I start cleaning my dishes, what happens? Very quickly, I start squeezing water, liquid out of my sponge. So therefore, we don't want to use a wet towel to clean anything. And we don't want to use a sponge to clean things on Shabbos, okay, including dishes. So therefore, there are lots of different alternatives where you can clean the dishes, but you don't squeeze any water out of anything. This is one of them, one example of them, okay? It may look a little funny, but it's basically a plastic pad, okay? You can get it in all good kosher shops. It's basically a plastic or silicone pad with a little sort of tentacles coming out of it, okay? And what it does is when you put it in water, it doesn't retain any water at all. There's nothing to squeeze. It doesn't absorb. Can you see? Nothing to squeeze at all, but it does help to get your dishes clean, okay? So there's a few different types of these type of things, like silicone pads and things like that, which don't actually absorb any water at all. So when washing the dishes on Shabbos or cleaning up spills on the side or that sort of thing, rather than use a sponge, you want to make sure if you're washing the dishes, it's something which doesn't absorb. Now, when you come to cleaning up spills, then it's very simple. What you have to do, instead of using your wet towel or your wet sponge, which is just going to start squeezing water all over the place, what you do is very simply, you get some sort of towel which is dry, and then you wipe up the spill with your towel. So instead of squeezing something, instead of wetting your towel and having a situation like this where you're going to start squeezing water out immediately, as long as you start with something dry, then all you're going to do is soak up the moisture and you're not going to squeeze it out. Okay, that's the key. Soak up moisture, don't squeeze it out. That's the key concept here. Okay. Now, in terms of brushes as well, by the way, you can use serviettes or tissues, any of those disposable things, no problem, use them to wipe up a spill, for example, and then just make sure not to squeeze them out. Normally, you wouldn't squeeze those out. Anyway, you would just take them off the table as they are wet and dump them in the bin. That's absolutely fine. No problem. It's when you start squeezing things out, then you've got a problem. The other thing just to know about washing up dishes, by the way, is you can wash up dishes to use on Shabbos. You can't wash up the dishes for after Shabbos. You can't wash the dishes up in order to use them after Shabbos, because that would be preparing for after Shabbat. Baby wipes are okay. They can be used because the amount of moisture that they contain inside, absorbed inside them is negligible. So that's okay to use on Shabbos, baby wipes. Now, What happens if I want to clean the floor? Oh, sorry, one more thing as well. The same thing goes with brushes as well. Okay, so brushes, although you could say that they're not the same as a sponge, they definitely don't absorb the same way as a sponge. But if you've got a brush for washing up, which has very, very closely spaced bristles, so then that in a way does absorb as well. And it will keep a little bit of the water in, and therefore you would be, when you're using the brush, then that's going to be a problem of squeezing out on Shabbos. So therefore, when it comes to washing the dishes, so therefore, use one of these pads rather than the brush. Now, when it comes to brushing your teeth, which Lee asked, which is a good question. So some people have what they call a Shabbat toothbrush. You might have seen these on sale, and they are also made of silicone, something like this, but more of like a toothbrush sort of, type of thing. And those, what they do again is there's no squeezing because they're just made of silicone. The problem that you have with that is it doesn't brush your teeth as well as a normal toothbrush. It doesn't brush your teeth as well as a normal toothbrush. Now, the other issue with brushing teeth, though, is in terms of using the toothpaste is a problem of smearing. We're not allowed to smear things on Shabbat. If you think about toothpaste, which is kind of almost a semi-solid, and you smearing that semi-solid over your teeth, so therefore toothpaste is a problem. So the way you should brush your teeth is as follows. The best option is to use one of these Shabbat toothbrushes and use liquid toothpaste. You can buy something called Theramed, and that's a liquid toothpaste. You could use mouthwash or something similar as well, but the Theramed is actually designed as a toothpaste. Use your Shabbat toothbrush so you're not squeezing anything. Use your liquid toothpaste so you're not smearing anything. That's the best option. If you really need to use a toothbrush because the concept, the idea of a Shabbat toothbrush just doesn't do it for you, it doesn't work, then you can use a toothbrush. Best if you can actually to get one designated for Shabbat. So there's a difference between Shabbat and the weekday one. And then you have your normal toothbrush and put your liquid toothpaste on there. Okay, that's the way you should do it. In terms of cleaning the floors, okay? So these are your options. One of these, yes? Larry, you recognize this? Okay, this is called broom for all the men, broom. So you can use one of these to clean your floor on Shabbos. That's no problem at all. If you want to use one of these, I don't know what this is called. Someone can help me out. What's this called? I don't know. Squirty thing. Do you know what this is? Yes, it squirts there.
Sponger.
Is it sponger? It's not really.
It's just a sophisticated sponge.
Okay, it's a sophisticated sponger, and basically it squirts out some sort of liquid cleaning fluid. I think that's what they told me it was. It squirts out there on the floor, and then you kind of do a bit of cleaning here with the bottom thing there. Okay, can you see it's like a towel attached to there? So now this, we're going to have to make sure if we want to spot clean with something like this. All we have to make sure is that we're soaking up the moisture and not squeezing. Soaking up and not squeezing, okay? So, as follows, you're not allowed to clean your whole floor with this. You can't start sort of mopping your whole floor with this. You'll definitely get it all wet, and you're not allowed to do that anyway because we're worried if you will get it wet, right? If you want to spot clean with one of these, that's fine. You just put a little bit of water on it, either from here or wherever, a little bit of water, and then make sure you're soaking up the moisture rather than squeezing it, okay? After everything we've learned, what do you guys think? Am I allowed to mop on Shabbat? You know, the good old-fashioned mop. No, that's right. A mop is a big no-no because the mop, basically, you're taking it, you make it soaking wet, you squeeze out the water, then you squeeze more water on the floor, then you squeeze it back in the... So definitely mopping is out on Shabbat, okay? Now, what about cleaning clothes? Are we allowed to clean our clothes on Shabbat? The answer is no. Now, you might say to me, who would clean clothes on Shabbat? We know you're not allowed to put the washing machine on anyway, but sometimes what happens is you get a little stain, and you want to do a little spot clean. So you start putting a bit of water on it and rubbing it and that sort of thing. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbat. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbat. If there's something on the surface, then you can remove whatever's on the surface. That's okay. That's not cleaning. But as soon as you start getting into rubbing things and putting water on them, then that would be a problem because you're not allowed to clean clothes on Shabbat. Now, the next thing that comes up around the home that we're going to cover, and I'm going quite quick, so if there's any questions, then please do stop me. But the next thing that we're going to cover around the home is building and constructing. Now, you might say to me, where am I going to? We know you can't build on Shabbat. No one is going to build their IKEA bookcase on Shabbat. Very good. and you shouldn't. But there are other situations as well where you might do it without thinking about it. So for example, if a leg falls off a chair, if a handle falls off a door, all those sorts of situations where you would, without thinking about it, I'll just put it back on. And even if there's no screw, I'll just, stick it in, put it back on, it'll be okay. Don't tell my wife, get away with it. That sort of thing you can't do on Shabbat, okay? Any type of adding on to the house and building in any way. Even sticking things to the walls is a problem on Shabbat. So with your blue tack and your sellotape, all those type of things, you want to stick something up onto the wall, those are a problem. If you've got magnets which are regularly taken on and off, meaning they're not going to stay there for a long time, they're the type of thing you take on and off all of the time, then that's fine. But again, if it's a magnet, sometimes you have hooks that just literally stay exactly where they are once you put them up on the wall, so it's going to stay there for a long time. Even if it's magnetic, then that would be a problem. So generally speaking, sticking things to the wall, to each other, whether it's with a glue or with a sellotape or anything like that, then that is a problem. In terms of things that are designed to be taken apart all of the time, like your buggy, for example. Some buggies have one piece and they fold up in one piece and they click together. Other buggies have two pieces. All of that is okay because you're not building anything, but rather that's the usage of the item. It's made to be put up and put down, taken apart, put back together all of the time. It's designed to work like that and to be done very easily, and therefore that's not considered to be building. Toys such as Lego, good question, Lego and Magnetiles and clicks, I'm just showing off, and Duplo and stickle bricks and anything like that you can think of, those are fine because you're not building anything meaningful there. Don't tell your kids I said that, but all they're doing is playing with the toy rather than actually building anything. The last topic I want to cover around the home is tying things, okay? So here, I have to admit, you see, this is the generation we live in. I couldn't find string, but I found a wire. There's loads of wires around spare. So tying knots, okay? Tying knots is a problem if they're permanent knots, if they're knots that are designed to stay, designed to remain. So even tying a knot like this, which is quite a simple knot to do, can you see that? That knot's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere, yeah? Because it just isn't. It's not. It's very solid. It's very strong. So to tie a single knot like that is a problem. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. Now, however, what about if you've got one of these? Anyone recognize this? This is the nappy bag. Okay. So anyone with young children or who's had young children, this is probably giving you a bit of trauma now. Okay. And it's not full. Honestly, this is not. Yeah. Okay. Genuinely. Okay. So this is a nappy bag. How do you tie a nappy bag? If anyone doesn't know, I'm happy to give you a lesson. Okay. I genuinely do know how to do this. You tie a nappy bag by doing it once like this. You just tie once like that. Done. It's very easy to take apart. Very easy. That is not a knot at all. There's no knot there whatsoever because all you're doing is you're crossing the ends once. I'm not making a knot at all, so therefore that is fine. No problem at all with doing that on Shabbos. The same thing with the bin bags as well. If you want to tie your bin bag up on Shabbos before you take it out, if you've got an Eruv and there's no problem with carrying it, do exactly the same thing. You just do it over once, one over the other. There's no knot there. That is absolutely fine. But don't start doing a double knot or anything like that because that's permanent knot and that would be an issue. And the very last thing to talk about in terms of tying knots is a good old shoelaces. Shoelaces, okay? So the way that we tie our shoelaces is by first making a regular, we just cross one over the other. And then after that, hang on a second, I'm gonna move my, okay? So once we've crossed one over the other, lessons in tying shoelaces, then we make a bow, okay? Now, this bow can be undone extremely easily, like that. Working there. That is how you undo a bow. Okay, it's very, very easy to do when your shoe is not on your computer, and because it's very easily undone, so therefore again it's not considered to be a knot as long as you're not planning on leaving it there for a long time. So most of us tie our shoelaces when we put them on and we untie them when we take them off. So therefore, as long as you're going to do that, it's not a permanent knot, then that's absolutely fine. If you're the type of person that ties your shoelaces once when you buy your shoes and they stay tied up, Rabbi Bazak's smiling, right? And they stay tied up forever, or even for days or weeks, however long it might be, then just do that before Shabbos, right? The likelihood is you will have done that before Shabbos because you've already bought your shoes anyway. But for most people that will untie their shoelaces when they take them off in the night, then there's no problem with tying your shoelaces. What about a double knot on shoes? So some people, right, you know what I'm talking about, you do your bow, and then after you've done your bow, you want to make sure that your bow stays, and therefore you just tie a knot in your bow like this, okay, to make sure that it stays, okay? Now that, because it's got a bow underneath it, on the one hand is not considered permanent, but on the other hand, you've got a little knot on top of it, so therefore only do it if it's necessary. So some people, or some shoelaces, just come undone all the time and drive you absolutely mad, and if you don't do one of these double knots, then you're not going to be able to wear your shoes. That would be fine. Kids' shoes as well, by the way. Sometimes kids' shoes, especially when they start wearing their shoelaces, they just need that double knot, you know, that sort of stability. Otherwise, they'll just undo. So those sort of cases, then it's fine. You can do a double knot. But otherwise, if you don't need to, then just do a regular bow, regular single knot. Any questions? Okay, brilliant. We are going to carry on with Rabbi Ross. Hello, Rabbi Ross.
Hi over there. Hi, Rabbi Birnbaum. Hi, everyone.
All the way from sunny Manchester. So I got cleaning products and you've got the whiskey out. I definitely got the bad end of the deal here.
I was going to say that. My understanding is that it's the last 9 minutes of the course.
That's
so
right.
It's the high-end time. That was my understanding. Right, everyone? Any misunderstandings? Oh, sorry, no, you're right. Not yet, right? Rabbi Bazak, you're probably getting very jealous over there.
What is that? What whiskey is that?
Oh, what is it? Well, it's got some water in it. So this is a Glenlivet, sweet and tropical notes. Rum. Guys, are you here to see what whiskey I got? Come
on. Only if you share it with us. Only if you're sharing it.
Anyway, what I want to actually do is I want to show you how I make Kiddush in my beautiful Kiddush cup over here. You can all see my beautiful Kiddush cup?
Beautiful.
Who likes it? Who likes my beautiful Kiddush cup over here?
I think we should have a whip round. Who wants to put in something for Rabbi Ross?
Seriously, Seed should donate him like a nice Kiddush cup.
Come on, we can help him out.
It's not acceptable. We have a plastic.
It is absolutely not. I mean, if it would be full of whiskey, that would be one thing. Yeah. So, guys, this is the story. When we make Kiddush, we all have dollar, but let's start with Kiddush. We are doing it because there is a mitzvah in the Torah of remembering the Shabbos day. We are supposed to, got interesting people in the room over here. We are supposed to, we got our mitzvahs in the 10 Commandments. And the mitzvah of remember the Shabbos day, we do actually when we make Kiddush. So it's very simple. You pick up your cup. Now we're going to see in a minute this doesn't really work so well. This one also doesn't work so well. You know, it's full of whiskey. This one over here, they did a whip round. This one over here actually works really well. And the way that one of my rabbis once put it is, Hashem created the world, and now with the seventh day, we are toasting the creator of the world. So now we have our mitzvah, one of the 10 Commandments. We are reciting Kiddush. We are doing Zachar es Shabbos, remembering Shabbos. It's for both men and women, this particular mitzvah. Now, how big does the cup have to be? Would this qualify? It is supposed to really hold what's called a revius, which is a certain measurement. I am terrible with measurements, but it's 3.8 fluid ounces, which is 112 milliliters. That's quite a bit of whiskey, I gotta say. But you're gonna see in a minute, we don't really make Kiddush on whiskey. Now we're supposed to ideally make it on a beautiful silver Kiddush cup if we have, or maybe a glass one. This is out, I'm afraid, guys. Gone, doesn't work. Maybe if we're traveling somewhere, we've got nothing else, perhaps. But we are ideally using something beautiful like this. So again, so we're filling it up. We're gonna have our wine, or we're gonna have our grape juice, at least on Friday night, and we're making our Kiddush. Ideally, we fill it the whole way, but we don't have to. And then we're supposed to drink a cheekful. Now, a cheekful for an average man is about 1.5 to 2 fluid ounces. So we're looking at roughly half the cup, give or take maybe a little bit more than a half the cup. And we're supposed to drink it within a few seconds. A few gulps. We don't have to be like animals, but like a few gulps. We're not going because the idea is it's like within the beginning of the blessing. It's in terms of the laws of blessings. We're supposed to drink it. So about half the cup within, I don't know, 20 odd seconds, something like that. If we can't drink wine or grape juice, whatever it is, we'll give it to someone else, and they'll drink that half a cup within this time period. So that is basically what we do for Kiddush, assuming we have wine or grape juice. We are supposed to have a meal with our Kiddush, which again, on Shabbos, it's quite simple because we'll have our challahs with it, right? Challahs are really delicious, right? Almost as good as the whiskey. And in fact, I will tell you something, they taste even better after you have some whiskey. I got a smile out of Rabbi Birnbaum, look at that. Maybe it's because he had his tea. Anyway, the point is...
I'm looking forward to Shabbos already.
Yeah. Why am I being stared at in the room? Anyway, the point is, my wife is staring at me. I'm not sure why. I don't make Kiddush from whiskey, just to give you the idea. The point is, you make Kiddush on your wine, and now you have your challah. So then, it's very simple, because that is your meal. But let's say you are going to a Kiddush in a shul, when, please God, they're allowed again. I think in London, you're going to be allowed them again, if I'm not mistaken. In Manchester, it's probably, I don't even know what we're going to be allowed here, because, well, it's complicated because our cases are less than yours. It doesn't matter. That's not the point of the last 3 minutes here. The point is that you're supposed to have a meal, which is either going to be challah or bread, or if you don't have that, at least it should be cake or something, mazon or something which is mazonot. That's the ideal. Actually, what I do this time of year, because we're supposed to have 3 meals on Shabbos day, I actually struggle because normally what we do is, you'll have your second meal at lunch, you'll wash, have bread, and then the third meal in the afternoon. I really struggle this time of year. So especially now where we're in lockdown, so I'm davening at home by myself. So I daven at the ideal time, which is sunrise. And about 8 o'clock in the morning, I make Kiddush. And I have my hamotzi, my second meal then, on a little challah roll, two challah rolls together, a bench. And then actually my lunch is my third meal. But that's a separate point. The point is that you are supposed to have a meal together with the Kiddush, otherwise the Kiddush doesn't work. Someone just asked me a question. Let me see if I did see it somewhere. A bit flashed up. Just give me a second. Now it's gone.
Yeah, I'll read you the question, Rabbi Ross.
Yes.
The question was from the Starks. Do you pour the wine before you start, or does it need to be ready on the table when the candles are lit?
That is a good question. I've grown up, and then if you're familiar with that, I don't think it has to be on the table from when we start. I think we can just bring it at Kiddush time, but that is a good question. Maybe you want to beautify your table, but I don't think it needs to be there. Okay, again, we're really running out of time, but that's the basic idea. You have your half a cup, and then you move into your meal, whether it's bread or whether it's cake, to go with it. That's very important. Otherwise, the Kiddush does not work. Again, there are going to be slightly interesting cases, such as somebody who is not capable of having grain products. What do they do? And you could have a child. We have a child, who can't have gluten. You have these situations. If you have the situation, speak to a rabbi in terms of how to deal with that. If somebody didn't have wine or grape juice for Friday night, they would actually make Kiddush on challah, believe it or not. Shabbos day, they would actually not make it on challah, they would make it on something like beer, something like that. Again, if you've got these situations, ask your local rabbi. Standing or sitting, again, there are different customs on it. The idea in standing is because it's a testimony that Hashem created the world. It's the testimony. The sitting down, the idea behind that is there's actually a Gemara explicitly that starts to speak about when you make a blessing on the wine, you are supposed to be sitting to be yotzi, to help others fulfill their mitzvah. You, again, do your custom. Interestingly enough, I sort of have a custom. My father stands. Goodness knows where he got it from, because it looks back, going back generations, maybe they sat. So again, it was when I was doing my, most recently, my Daf Yomi and Brochas, and this came up, I learned, Ramesh Feinstein seems to say, if you don't have a really strong custom in your place, it's better to sit. So now I just sort of stand for the very beginning of Kiddush, the testimony part, and then I sit. But again, if you've got a strong family custom, feel free to do that. If not, for the blessing itself, at least you're going to sit. Okay, that's Kiddush. Havdalah, a couple of...
Rabbi Ross, sorry, just to interrupt a second. A lot of people ask, how or whether they need to share the wine or the grape juice around, and what the best ways of doing that. Have you got any tips about the best way, especially when you've got guests? By the way, the Ross family usually, not now, but usually have an abundance of guests on Shabbos. So if there's anyone who knows to answer this question, what do you do when you've got lots of guests and you want to share the Kiddush round? How do you navigate that?
That's a great question. So we've got all our like cups, and we'll like beginning like pour into each cup like a little bit. Rabbi Berman, how do you deal with that in your home?
Yeah, so it's a beautiful custom, which is to share it round, like you said, because it's a kos shel bracha, which means it's a cup of blessing. So after we've made the blessing on the Kiddush, so then it's a lovely thing to let everyone else drink from it. They don't have to. There's no halachic requirement to. It's enough if one person drinks from it, either the person that makes Kiddush or one other person. But nevertheless, because it's a cup which has been made a blessing on, you get blessing when you drink from it. So therefore, what a lot of people do is they share it round. And the way you share it round is by putting, like Rabbi Ross said, a little bit in each cup. So you could pre-fill the other cups and then pour a little bit into each one. Okay, some people just literally fill up the cups beforehand, don't share out from the Kiddush cup. That's also absolutely fine. Like I said, as long as one person drinks from it, then that's absolutely fine. But if you want to share it out, then a tip for how to do that is pre-fill the cups before, and then just add a little bit to each one. Or alternatively, you have a little jug. We actually have a little jug at the table, a mini kind of jug, and we pour grape juice in before, and then I make Kiddush. Pour a little bit from my cup into that jug, and then that jug is used to fill all of the other little cups, and I drink the rest of the cup. So I've drunk the cup, and everyone else has also got some of the wine from that cup, which I made the bracha.
Because again, the idea is just the person who's making the Kiddush is really supposed to have about half of the cup. So you need to leave yourself enough, so you might be able to prepare ahead of time. Really, really well pointed out. Okay, fantastic. Moving on to Havdalah swiftly. So Havdalah, there's a very big difference at the beginning. Kiddush, we fill it up to the top, but we don't want to, waste any wine or anything. With Havdalah, we're supposed to have it to the very, very brim, and then when we pick it up, it overspills a little bit. The idea is we're now going into the week, and we're supposed to overflow with blessings. So we filled up our Kiddush cup. Our Kiddush cup is in the right hand. Somebody is going to be holding the Havdalah candle. So I've got my Kiddush cup in my right hand. And truth is, I should have gone back a stage. At the very end of Shabbos, if you're not ready to make a Havdalah, or even before you do work, which would include getting out the Havdalah, there's a little phrase that we say, which is Baruch Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol, which is basically an expression to differentiate between Shabbos and weekday. So that's, if you're getting yourself ready for Havdalah, or if you're washing up while someone's coming home from shul, or whatever the case is. Okay, so you've got the wine, which is like in your right hand, in the beautiful Kiddush cup. Not in this one. This one is gone. And now you've got it to the very brim. It overfills a little bit. You've got your candle. You've got your spices. So you make your Borei Pri Hagofim. Now, you don't drink from it right then. It's very similar, almost like if you go to a wedding, you don't drink the cup right then. You're going to hold on to it till later, because the next blessings are a part of the blessing itself. You're going to have the blessing on the spices. So when you make the blessing on the spices, this comes over here, and this comes out here. I've got cloves. There are other spices you could use. You make the blessing. Everybody gets their delicious smell, because the idea is that over Shabbos we get a second soul, because it's such a holy, special, spiritual time. And in order to revive ourselves now that we're losing it, so we revive ourselves with spices. This is gone. This comes back to the right hand, and then we are going to make the blessing. We're going to this is going to come out maybe in the wine a little bit, or depending how high it is. And then we are going to drink the wine. Unless I know it's over time, unless Rabbi Berman and Rabbi Bazik feel that something else should be added. It's just one other thing. When you look at the candle, if you look at the flame, Lee asked a question, we're not making the declaration. Oh, Rabbi Berman, do you want to either read it or answer it?
Yeah. Lee asked, by not making the declaration or doing Havdalah, is Shabbos technically continuing?
It's a great question. So technically, it's in theory, you may not make the declaration 2 days later, so it's finished at that point. But a short while later, you could in theory continue Shabbos. There's a mitzvah of Tosfos Shabbos. You can continue Shabbos going. So you are supposed to say that phrase, just a few words, Baruch Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol, 5 words, before you do any work. So when the candle, you're supposed to look at your fingernails. The ideal way I want it all written down is like this. You look like at the front of it, all the way around, and then the palm comes back up. That's just something extra. But we're already 4 minutes over. So unless Rabbi Berman and Rabbi Basil want to add something which could include to be l'chaim, I think we are very much done. I want to wish everyone on the course who's either watching or there, and especially my wife who is in the room with me, most especially Rabbi Birnbaum, who put this amazing, phenomenal course on. Yes, Lee, I agree with you. Especially L'chaim. You should only know blessing through all of the wonderful things you do in your life. And through Shabbos, you should see the most unbelievable, beautiful blessing that should come to you. All of you, Baruch Atah, Adonai Melech Haolam, Shekol Nehiyah B'Varo.
Amen. Beautiful.
And if you want to know whether to say Amen, I think Rabbi Birnbaum is giving a class on that. Other than that, good night.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Rabbi Ross. The only thing I'm going to pick you up on is not sharing that whiskey with us. Next time we've got to deliver a whiskey to all of us, and then we'll have l'chaim. But
good.
It was, you know what? It's actually, we've come to the end of our 3 sessions here. And I have to say that it's been a privilege to share the journey with you guys, with the people that are watching, and people that will watch this course later on. Shabbos is the source of all blessing. Shabbos is the soul of the week. And the more that we learn about it, the more that we make that Shabbat into the authentic day of rest that it's supposed to be. And all of these details by themselves seem to be little, they seem to be minor, they seem to be technical. But when we put all of them together into our lives, into our homes, then that's what makes Shabbat the day of rest, the day that infuses the soul into the other 6 days of the week. So well done to all of you for taking the time out to learn together with us. Here's to the next Shabbat project, please God, which will be coming on its way soon. Keep it up, keep on your journey, keep growing. That's what it's all about. It's the same for me and Rabbi Ross and Rabbi Bazak, all of us together at whatever level we're at. Keep on striving, keep on growing. That is the key. And we will hopefully, please God, be sending you a summary of the course. We'll be producing a booklet with the notes of the course and maybe a few other goodies as well at the same time, so that you'll actually have them printed on paper and able to refer to them on Shabbat as things come up. As I always say to everyone, the best way to learn is through your own mistakes. So I'm going to wait for those text messages, those WhatsApp messages to come into my phone after Shabbat from people that didn't know, because I moved this, was I allowed to squeeze that? Was I supposed to do this in the kitchen, or I shouldn't have done that? Best way to learn, the best way to learn, okay? So keep those questions coming in. You can ask me on the Halacha hotline. Rabbi Ross is obviously available, as are Rabbi Bazak and every other seed educators as well. Drive us mad with those questions, the best way to learn about things. Wishing everyone a very, very good night and a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Cheers. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thanks. See you.
Thank you.
Bye. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.